Hello, Mr. Kaufman. Your article, Dangerous Islamic Jihadist from U.S. Visits Florida, sent shivers down my spine. First of all, because of who Hatem Fariz is, and secondly, because of the push to bring lovers of Sharia to America under Obama and now Biden. Please tell those watching and listening what makes Hatem Fariz dangerous and why Israel should have just said no.
First of all, that title, I don't know where they got that from, but it was I write for Front Page Magazine for the Horowitz Freedom Center, and
That was in World Israel.
Yeah, I thought the original title was better. It was good. Florida Islamic Jihad in Israel. Very.
I like that. I saw that too.
But because this is not the first time that I've written about this. It's actually the third time. So because this keeps on happening for some reason. And why is this guy dangerous? It's very simple. The guy was involved in the terror network set up by Sami al-Arian in the Temple Terrace, the subsidiary of Tampa Bay, Florida. They created a think tank, a charity, a children's school, and a mosque, all involved with Islamic Jihad. I think the mosque wasn't named in the indictment, but the other three were, including the children's school. This guy, I could read part of the indictment. I think it's important. So they wrote on here, Fariz was a PIJ member and did, quote, conspire to commit offenses against the United States by making and receiving contributions of funds, goods, and services to or for the benefit of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In the indictment, it discusses, things that they were raising money for, terrorist attacks that they were raising finances for, again, from Florida, not from Gaza or Ramallah. They were raising money from Tampa Bay, Florida, in order to commit terrorist attacks like suicide bombings. And this individual, he pled guilty to giving material support to Palestinian Islamic Jihad, very similar to the guilty plea of Sami al-Arian as well. Al-Arian was deported from the U.S. to Turkey, and Hatem Fariz, he served out a jail sentence. It was around 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. He pled guilty in 2006 and got out of prison in 2010, and is still involved with Islamic Jihad, I would say, because right after he was released from prison in 2010, it wasn't like 3 months later that he was hired as the managing director of the Islamic community of Tampa, the mosque, also known as the Al-Qassam Mosque, the mosque that was founded by Sami al-Arian. So right after he leaves prison, he gets this job as the managing director of the mosque, a mosque named for Al-Qassam. It was one of the main inspirations. It was an individual named Izzeddin Al-Qassam. He was one of the main inspirations for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. He was a jihadist himself, very well loved within the Palestinian community. You hear his name. He's named. There's Al-Qassam rockets. There's the Al-Qassam brigades. Many things within Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas are things named after this individual, and they named this mosque after him. And so, right after, not 3 months after he leaves prison, he becomes the head of this mosque. So he had a job essentially waiting for him after he left prison. And you could also see, when he's arrested, it looks like he has a smile on his face. I don't think he or any of the co-defendants were that unhappy about being arrested for this. I mean, if you think about the mindset of an individual that's raising money for things like suicide attacks, really acts of brutality that most people would consider, anathema to anything with regards to ethics or morality. You have to believe that these individuals have no problem with getting arrested, as in Israel. Same thing. Many times when these people are arrested, they have smiles on their faces. They have no problem with it. So he served. 3 or 4 years in prison. He comes out. He's got a decent job. He's now a living martyr for the community. That mosque is not a small mosque. That you look at that congregation. It's a very sizable congregation. You look at the children's school that was founded by Sami al-Arian. The mosque and the school still exists. The school is right next door to the mosque, and they just built a huge facility for the school. So they're it's not like when he was released. When somebody goes to prison for anything, but when somebody goes to prison and they come out, many times they'll be ostracized from the larger community. The people specifically won't want to befriend them any longer, just because maybe they have something to lose, maybe their livelihood, by being associated with someone from prison. This is something even worse than that. This is a guy that was raising money for terrorist activities overseas to murder people, and he comes out of prison, and right away he becomes the head of a mosque, and he's essentially the head of the mosque and the school. He has free reign in the school. There's much video and pictures of him, walking through the school, saying hi to the administrators. No problem with these children, massive amounts of children around him. And all these children are being, they're being brainwashed into this mindset, I believe, this mindset of intense hatred, but violent hatred of people that are different than them. And it's serious. And this is why he is dangerous. He's a dangerous individual.
And this is in the United States of America, in the state of Florida, not in Palestine.
Correct. He has I don't want to go too far off the subject, but he's had the police chief of Tampa taking photos with his and her arms around each other. The mayor of Tampa has written proclamations to events that he's been involved with. It seems like everybody's forgetting about the fact that this guy is a convicted member of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, one of the world's most brutal terrorist organizations.
Wow. And this was and your biggest concern when you wrote this, the point was to point out Israel should not have accepted this guy in. But on top of that, in your article, you point out this wasn't his first visit to Israel after getting out. And
No,
that just kind of blew my mind. This is a convicted member of the terror organization Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which has killed several Israelis.
His brother wrote in 2017, when he made his first trip into Israel since his arrest. He wrote something like 14 years. It's been a long 14 years, and he's finally back in. He called them like Abu Ubaidah. They have these nicknames for their children. So his son Ubaidah, Fariz, the father takes the name of the son, and his brother called him Abu Ubaidah. They give them like an honor to use these terms. Is back in Palestine after 14 years. So he started going back actually in 2017. He started taking trips into Israel, and he's taken a number of them since then. And yes, he just was there in March, and he was there. He was just in there also before that in November 2021. So he's flying frequently. He's getting a lot of frequent flyer miles going to the the Holy Land, and I find it very disturbing that he would be allowed in, and a number of the individuals that he's taking with him on these tours as well.
Wow, I'm gonna bring it up in a minute. Does this is when you think about this, at least when I thought of it, my first question is, does he have some special free pass to enter Israel? Because I mean, convicted terrorists generally don't get in.
It's a good question, because, as I mentioned in the article, people with much lesser, problems are frequently, routinely, turned away for trying to get into Israel. There are Jews that are involved in like left-wing causes that Israel won't allow into the Jewish state. So to have a convicted member of a bloodthirsty terrorist organization that specifically exists for the bloodshed of Israelis, it it doesn't make sense. So he apparently uses this tour company that he has through the mosque, called Adam Travel Hajj Tours. He supposedly, on its face, does tours for Hajj, which is a certain time of year, and also for Umrah, which is the off times to go to Mecca. Like Jews, a lot of Jews have, within the religion, at some point in your life, or different parts of times in your life, you're supposed to visit Jerusalem if you have the means to do so. Very similar in Islam to visit Mecca, and he's running these tours, these Hajj and Umrah tours, through the mosque, and I believe he's using this in order to get into Israel. In this last trip that he took, he went to Israel, and he was in Jerusalem, at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, in Ramallah. He went to the Golan Heights. I said that it looked like, the video that he put up looked like surveillance footage. A lot of the videos he puts up with different parts of Israel look like surveillance footage, but this particular one, he went to Mount Hermon, which is the top of the Golan, and he showed a good part of it. That's certainly a sensitive spot for Israel. They don't want to give up the Golan because it's so sensitive to their security needs.
Absolutely.
And then at some point he drove to Jordan, and from Jordan he went to Saudi Arabia for this supposed Umrah tour. I don't believe the Umrah tour had really much to do with this trip. I think the entire trip had to do with going to Israel, and it's my belief, at least, that he's scouting out certain sites, and it's a legitimate belief when you look at I had written about in 2020, or he went in February of 2020. He was posting a lot of video and photographs of all these major hotspots in Israel. He was driving all over Israel, taking video footage, but he stopped posting for a few days, and it was during those days, specifically on the days that he stopped posting on social media, that Palestinian Islamic Jihad fired over 100 rockets into Israel at Israeli civilian neighborhoods. Is there a connection? I don't know, but on that same trip, days from when they were firing those rockets, he visited the gravesite of Izzeddin al-Qassam, who I mentioned was one of the main inspirations for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. He visited the gravesite of one of his co-conspirators, Sami Hamoudeh, from the Tampa trials. He's buried over there as well. He actually celebrated He celebrated. They were taken into custody. He and the three co-defendants. The other defendants, four of them were overseas at the time, in places like Damascus, Syria, which where they were not going to be extradited to the United States to face a trial at the time. Syria was harboring Palestinian Islamic Jihad. There was, they were openly helping Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And the leaders of Islamic Jihad were in Damascus. So there was no way that Damascus, Assad is going to ship over the leaders of Islamic Jihad. He was counting on them to some respect, staying in Damascus and helping them, and in turn they helped him. So here, the four defendants who were in the United States, there was a morning raid, early morning raid on February 20th, which was 2003, I believe, and at February 20, 2003. So he posts on his social media while he's in Israel, visiting all over Israel, walking all over Israel with his video camera. He posts online celebrating the fact that it was the 17-year anniversary of his being taken into custody in 2003. He's celebrating that. He puts, like, at the end of it, like 3 exclamation marks to make it like it was a great thing. Because, as I mentioned before, I just don't believe that he had any problem with being arrested. I remember when I started my organization way back when, it was Americans Against Hate. That my new organization is basically an outgrowth of Americans Against Hate. So now it's Joe Kaufman Security Initiative. But when I started my organization, I had started with an individual, a friend of mine, and I remember, because we had started it in order to protest Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton was coming to town, and he was going to be speaking at the same event as the Lieutenant Governor of Florida, Buddy McKay. Buddy McKay at the time was running for governor against Jeb Bush, and we just believed that it was wrong for Buddy McKay to be on stage at the same, or participating at the same event with an anti-Semite. We had a lot of information to back up the fact that Al Sharpton was an anti-Semite, and I remember saying to my friend and colleague at the time, Mordecai Horowitz, who's in Israel now. He lives in Israel. But anyway, sorry, Mordecai, shout out. But I remember asking Mordecai, I said, what happens, because it was a concern of mine, what happens if Al Sharpton sues us for this? And he said, that would be a great thing. It would be, you'd have national news if Al Sharpton threatened to sue or sued. So and actually, Sharpton called me the night before and did just that, threatened to sue, and and right away, I was thinking, like, hey, this is a great thing. I said, bring it on, Whereas I was concerned about it before, not concerned anymore. Do it, come on. Nothing ever happened, but
gee, I wonder why.
but it's much like that with this guy Fariz. He goes to prison, and with a smile on his face, because he knows this is not a big deal. Going to prison for 3 or 4 years, having this great job, to come out of it, having to become somebody beloved within, unfortunately beloved within the Muslim community, because he is. And it's not just from his mosque and that children's school. It's well beyond that. In Tampa Bay, he is a Muslim leader who people want to be around. Politicians want to be seen with this guy because in the end, they're whores that want to get votes, and they see the Muslim community maybe as a vehicle to to keep them in office. And a good part of the community has zero problem with what he has done. So it's, anyway, I don't know where we're at.
So this is the interesting part. And my thought process here is the Palestinians, when they get arrested and they go to jail, in general they get paid by the Palestinian government pays and takes care of their family.
Right.
And it gives them more credibility. So I'm thinking he may be, when they got arrested, he may have thought more of that concept. I mean, smiling like that, somebody's, they're gonna, the church, that mosque will take care of my family type thing. I don't have to worry about it. We're all gonna get paid, because it's pretty much the PIJ type of mentality if you're in Palestine. I mean, maybe if they brought that mentality here, I guess that would be the same thought expression, and which is another reason for the United States government to deport. if I mean, I don't know, is he the reason why he wasn't deported? Was he born here?
He was actually born, it's my understanding, he was born in Puerto Rico. So he was not born here, but he did have a quote I was going to mention in the, towards the end. Well, because he was, we could say that nobody's paying attention to this guy and everybody's ignoring his background. Maybe the U.S. is ignoring his background. Maybe Israel's ignoring his background, if they even know about it. But when he was traveling in 2020, he was traveling through Lisbon, Portugal, in order to get to the Middle East. And interesting enough, when he was on his way back, the Israelis didn't stop him. The Americans didn't stop him leaving America, but he was stopped by U.S. authorities trying to board the plane in Lisbon, and he was held back for a day. I could read the quote from it. The quote is disturbing in itself. He said, he wrote, just got pulled out of the plane in Lisbon, Portugal. No security clearance to enter the country, LOL. Spending the night here. Any recommendations for good places to visit? Of course, all accommodations covered with your tax money, end quote. So the guy's basically, he's laughing it off, which is pretty much what he did when he went to prison. He doesn't care. This is his life. He's doing it for his cause. He believes his cause is righteous, and he doesn't care if if the rest of the free world thinks that this guy's that he's a terrorist. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter to the guy.
It's really problems. It's a real problem. I want to go back and look at. I mean, this is a guy he's the imam of a Southern Florida mosque, but he's also functioning as the leader of a travel agency. I mean, put that in quotes. And he's a tour type guide. When you look at it, if he's leading people there, is he leading Americans into relationships with jihadis? Is probably in Islamic controlled areas of Israel? Isn't that what we're seeing?
Well, first of all, I go back to the quote from the indictment, because the Americans thought it was serious that he was involved in Islamic Jihad. He wasn't brought up on charges in Israel. He was brought up on charges in the United States. The quote, conspire to commit offenses against the United States by making and receiving contributions of funds, goods, and services to or for the benefit of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So the United States felt that it was that he committed an act against the U.S. by being involved in this terrorist organization. A good part of it, for the simple fact that on the State Department list of foreign terrorist organizations, Palestinian Islamic Jihad is is on that list. But with regards to bringing people on these tours with him, you know, in looking at the people that he is bringing on these tours with him, people from the States, these people, he, as far as I can tell, he knows them. A lot of them come from his hometowns from New Jersey and Chicago, Illinois, where he, two places where he spent a lot of time as maybe as a kid or before coming to Florida. He lived in these places. These were his residences. Was Clifton, New Jersey, and Chicago, Illinois. But also the individuals that he's taking with him, they know about this stuff. They don't need any jihadi education. These guys are in favor of the jihad. You know, if you look at the vast majority of the people he's taking with him, you will see, and I've done a lot of research, you know, on their social media. They post memorials for dead Islamic Jihad leaders. One guy posted a picture of himself with one of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad leaders, saying what an honor it was to have met this leader. His brother, who he takes on these trips, Hazem, his name is Hatem Freeze. His brother's name is Hazem Freeze. Hazem posts on his social media. He puts a picture of militants from Islamic Jihad, and he calls them Gaza heroes. He writes Gaza heroes. Here's some quotes, a few quotes from people he took with him. Allah take revenge on the Jews. This is an individual on his tour. Another one posted video footage of Israeli soldiers. This is what I mentioned in his last trip that he did. He put up video footage of Israeli soldiers being blown up by IEDs following an ambush, and he wrote a note on it saying, quote, Allah grant victory to your religion and let us cut out their throats, end quote. The same guy put up footage of a destroyed Israeli home, celebrating that it, quote, was hit directly by a missile by the Palestinian resistance in the Yehud, which means Jewish area of Tel Aviv, end quote. And this same individual wrote, again on tour with Fariz, wrote, quote, glory Gaza, O Allah, reward them and grant them a speedy victory over the Jews and their agents from the Arabs and the West. So you have one guy like talking about taking revenge on the Jews, and another guy, you know, asking for Allah to grant them victory over the Jews. It's got to be everybody. You know, everybody who sees that has to understand.
And then these guys go back, and that's the part I don't get.
The Israelis, you know, these guys don't have Israelis the best intentions for Israelis or Jews in general. These people want to see death, and here they are being allowed into Israel with these types of feelings. I believe all in free speech, but you have these types of, you say these types of things. You know, if I were Israeli, I wouldn't want them walking around me over there. Israelis have enough problems with terrorists to have these guys coming from another country who openly state on their social media that they want death to come to Jews.
This is scary stuff. Is there a reason you can think of why this guy is not on the do not fly list?
A lot of these guys are not on the do not fly list, and certainly it would be my goal, well, to have him incarcerated, but certainly to be deported or to be on a do not fly list. But unfortunately, I don't have that kind of control. There was one individual that accused me of getting him placed on a no-fly list, and I have no doubt it was my work that got him placed on the no-fly list. He was
on the do not fly list,
but he was placed on a do not fly list, but an imam. But but I wouldn't. I don't know. You know, it's like we were talking about with Phil. You know, Haney.
Yeah.
Most agents that I speak with, and I speak with agents. You know, I'm in communication with different agencies, but it's usually a one-way street. You know, I supply information, and I hope that they do the right thing. And in this case, I supply information, and I hope that they do the right thing, the Israelis and the Americans, with regards to this guy.
It's national security again. I was just saying a little while ago, it should never be a political thing. It should just be for protection of our country and our people. Yeah, and
It,
that's
it would be
it.
great if that were the case, but then
Yes,
if that were the case, you wouldn't have the Tampa chief of police, you know, standing on stage arm in arm with this guy. You know, you would have people in law enforcement
well, even if
taking.
they did, that would have somebody, making a phone call and visiting the Tampa chief of police and letting her know what she just did. I mean, come on. It's not happen. It's not something is not working that needs to be working. That's that's pretty evident.
I would think if I were the chief of police or anybody in law enforcement and I wanted to go to an event where this guy was at, I would at least know who this guy was. You know, who was I
Exactly.
getting? Who was I touching at this at
It's not
this?
like your articles are invisible either, because I mean, I actually look for them. So
If you would do a search for his name, it's not hard. It will pop up some type of, you know, whether it's my article or the indictment or something to do with Sammy
I
al-Arian.
mean,
It's going to come up
you can
right
go to
away.
the investigative project on terrorism and type his name, and it's there.
Absolutely. And if
That's
and
enough for you not to meet. I mean, as you would think, law enforcement, how they could just do something.
when I've traveled to Israel, I you know they interview you. You know, what is, to the point of, what is your favorite color? You know, I mean, it doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense is the fact that he's got this tour company that he's exploiting. Um, but I do believe at some point he's going to be stopped, because unless they kill me, I'm not going to be stopped. so, so at some point, um, I believe I'm gonna get my way on this, you know, for
One
right.
of the things your article pretty pretty much concludes is that allowing Israel a freeze into Israel should be considered an act of criminal negligence. I mean, especially if we know that if they knew his presence may have been the cause of those rockets going up. That might have been a celebratory, hey, you're here type thing. Do
Well, the
you
fact that
also
he's going there, visiting these grave sites, writing a celebratory message about being arrested. Who does that? Who does that? 17-year anniversary of my arrest. Why is that a great thing? To most people, it's not. But to people in his circle, it's a thing of honor, where he's, like I say, a living martyr over it. The fact that the people that he's taking on these tours, the fact that somebody's putting up video footage of Israelis being blown up by an IED, and then talking about, how glory to Allah, to take revenge on the Jews. Um, those are the types of individuals you do not want anywhere, whether it's Israel or America or anywhere. Maybe in Gaza they want those people. Maybe in Ramallah they want those people. But in the normal world, civilized world, you want to stay as far away from those individuals as possible. And I believe at some point the Israelis are going to understand that.
I will say this. I know that I wrote this as a question originally. Do you consider our government's not stopping communicating and meeting with known members of terrorist acts of criminal negligence? And I do consider that. We talk about it. You know, when I was studying intelligence analysis, we talked about how a lot of times it's basically you're playing whack-a-mole, but when you're not stopping these acts, I should say it's not you, or it's the when our government is not intervening, it's a problem.
Well, like I said, when they took him into custody in the indictment itself, it says that he was acting against America. So America took it seriously. And second of all, when he's taking these trips, if this is surveillance, like I believe it is, and he's given nobody any reason for it not to be, visiting these graves and having the celebratory message and meeting with all of these individuals who love Palestinian Islamic Jihad leaders in particular, not Hamas, but Palestinian Islamic Jihad. It seems to me that he's never left that Hatem Fariz of the 1990s and 2003 when he was arrested. It seems like he's the same exact individual as Hatem Fariz in 2022. He's leading an Islamic Jihad linked mosque, and he's going to visit their grave sites, and he's making these messages. There's no doubt in my mind that this guy is still a part of this organization, and if he is, then I'm sure in his mind anything that he can do to help that cause, he's going to do. And he's shown that he just doesn't care.
And once again, Joe, he is the leader of a mosque in Southern Florida, which has a school and a couple other organizations that tied to it, correctly? Or am I correct there?
A huge school, which just had a giant, giant building, created for it, a big athletic center for this children's school. So in Tampa, they're not going to do anything to this guy. He's beloved in his community, and it seems like the politicians want to be seen with this guy. But if anybody takes security seriously in the United States or in Israel or any place else that he's flying to, even in Portugal that he's flying through, then they have to see this guy as nothing but a threat, which he is.
I think I see him as a threat to the children, is what I'll come out and say. Joe, I want to say thank you again for joining us and sharing your research. It's incredibly valuable. Please don't stop with your work. It's incredibly important. Thank you. Oh, wait, tell everybody how they can follow your work and help support you and your work.
You go to kaufmansecurity.org. You could donate to our organization. Please do. It's very important. I don't get a salary for what I do, but our organization is a nonprofit 501c3. So you could donate, and it would be a lot of help and very important for this research and writing and me being able to do shows like this. So thank you.
God bless, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks. Be well. God bless.